Okay, hello, welcome. We're in lesson 14 of the CompTIA Security Plus certification preparation guide. So we want to look at security governance. Now, the idea for this module is that you should be able to understand policies, procedure, guidelines, everything that is going to help us make sure that our entire framework, our entire enterprise is protected. So when you hear the word security governance, you're trying to say, how do we do management? What's our posture like? How do we manage everything that have to do with our enterprise in terms of cybersecurity? What are our guidelines? What are the things that we need to put in place to make sure that to the public and also internally, we can be very secured. So that's why we talk about governance. Governance is about management, it's about people, it's about processes, it's about technology. How do you put all of these things together and have a very systematic process to ensure that you are secured? So in 14A, we're going to be looking at policies, standards, and guidelines. Now, what are policies? So they are very vital in establishing effective governance and ensuring organizational compliance. I will always say that your information security policy is the first and most important thing you need to do when you want to stay secured. You see, most of the time, people are very fond of saying, okay, we want to secure this system, we want to secure this company, we want to secure this enterprise, we want to secure this maybe government institution, or we want to secure this campus. And what we just need to do is to start installing this software, doing this, doing that. Those things are very secondary. The very primary and first thing you should do is, do you have an information security policy? Because that's going to tell what you should do, how you should do it, when something goes wrong, what you should do, right? So very, very important. So because this forms the framework of operations, decision-making, behaviors. How should staff behave? When we have somebody external coming into the company, what should they do? It's like our book of life, our like guideline, our rules for a compliant and ethical corporate culture. Aligns the organization around common goals, prevent misconduct, and remove inefficiencies. So there are several types of policies. Depending on how large the enterprise is, if it's a very small company, we can have one document that is just together as a one PDF. But if it's a very big enterprise, we can have each of these policies as different policies so that we have acceptable use policy. So what are the kind of things we should do and we shouldn't do? How should we use our network? How should we use external drives? How should we use the internet? How should we use our website? What's acceptable and what's not acceptable? That's what you have in an acceptable use policy document. Then you have information security policies. So that's where you have password policy, you have network policy, you have website policy, you have several kinds of policies under information security policy. You also have the business continuity and continuity of operations plan, COPE, or at times we say BCP, business continuity plan. Here, what you're trying to say is that if you have an attack, and sometimes, depending on the enterprise, you can collapse these three policies together: incident response, disaster recovery, and business continuity plan, BCP. So you can have three of them very interwoven because they all talk about how do we ensure that the company keeps on moving even when we have an attack, right? So we also have software development lifecycle policy. So how should we build software? I think on the channel, I have a video. The name is Software Development Lifecycle, especially for developers. It's a 30-minute video where I talked about all the different aspects of developing your software: quality assurance, developers, project manager, business analyst, product designer. So here for the policy, we're saying, how should we develop our software, especially if it's a software company? Then change management is, how should we go about difference in what we planned as at when we started the project or when we're trying to do stuff and when we are actually building the project. especially if it's for development, or you have change in a request by client. So how should we go about it? Who is the final, who have the final say with respect to, should we accept this change from the client? Imagine if you are building a software, imagine if you are deploying an enterprise network, how are you going to adapt to those different changes? So that's what you call change management. So all of the guidelines that tell you, okay, if a customer says, okay, I think we need to add this to the game. So how do you affect price difference, scope difference, the time you're going to use to achieve that, all of the 6 constraints in project management, right? So all of these are the different common policies, and they are very crucial. If you have a very robust policy and they are versionized, they are updated from time to time, people get trained on these policies, it gives you a very good governance. Then we have guidelines. Guidelines are just recommendations. So if you want to do this, this is what you should do, this is how you can do it. So they are more flexible than policies. Then we have procedures. So procedure are step-by-step action. So anytime we have a new server, this is how we implement it. The procedure can be, first thing to do is to do a vulnerability assessment. Second thing is to do a meeting. Third thing is to make sure that we have all the stakeholders involved, right? The network engineer, the people in accounting, the persons that are going to manage the data center or the server. Everybody, we do a meeting with everybody. Then we do an installation plan or a setup plan. After the setup plan, we implement, then we test, we commission, then we do after test. So depending on the organization, you can have different procedures for these things. So it just defines step-by-step action of deploying something. Or if we're a web company, if we want to deploy a website or want to implement a third-party API for a solution, how do we do things? So you have examples like onboarding, offboarding, background checks. How should you do background checks? Software provisioning. How do you set up a software and start using it? Desktop deployment, patching and updating, go live actions, after-hour support, ticket management. What's the procedure? I think there's a company that started a software, like a SaaS software, to help people manage some of these things. Because imagine if you have 50 employees and let's say 20 goes and maybe they go for a PhD program, or they go for a master's program, or they further their education, or some of them get another job, or somebody starts up his own firm, goes freelance, somebody does retires. So how do you ensure that everybody's on track? How do you ensure that you have a very good, close-knitted governance? And that's why some of these things are very important. Then you have standards. So standards are like what you should do, and most of the times we draw them from industry standards. So most of the times we draw them from the industry standards. We have ISO 2K series. The NIST I love NIST a lot. So they have quite a lot of series, quite a lot of standards that you could use to make your organization. And if you can keep to it, it's going to help you quite a lot. Then we have the PCI, the payment card industry, we have the FIPS and so many others. That's why if you want to even create your own policies, you should look at most of these standards to know what to do, what should be done. You don't just create a policy from the blues. They are often associated with regulations and policies. Regulations and policies use standards to offload details, because all of these details you have them. You can look them up. They provide a thorough. If you are going to do a policy, okay, I think maybe there's little to which I could pack up in this CompTIA S Plus series. I will try to do a series that will just be on information security policy development, right? I will see how to tie it up with the threat management series we have on the channel. So if you're not subscribed, don't forget to subscribe. And if you need something else, or you want me to do a record on another series, you can also drop that in the comment section. If you have questions, Don't forget to drop it. And also share this series to as many groups, platforms that you know for persons that are interested in cybersecurity or preparing for the S+ exam. So in that series, I'm going to consider what's the step-by-step process. There's about 5-7 step process if you need to do a very robust policy for your organization. Then we have legal environment. So in trying to have a very robust information security policy or to have very good governance, you need to look at the legislation behind your country. Every country, every niche, every area, every industry. If you're in banking, there are regulations that you need to hook up to. You need to make sure that you're compliant with. If you are in healthcare, there are healthcare regulations. If you are in whatever your niche, if you're in technology, if you're in payment industry, there are laws, there are guidelines. If you operate globally, there are global laws like the GDPR, the NIST is a country, but applies to quite a lot of countries and the rest. For legal environment, for privacy, you look at GDPR, CCPA. For energy, you look at this. A lot of other countries have theirs. For education, you look at this. For healthcare, this is very common to the US. I think when my first daughter was kind of not too fine, she was sick 7 years ago. I had to go to several, and my wife, we went to several hospitals. I think that was the time I started looking at my country's medical act, right? Because there are guidelines on how the doctor-patient relationship, how things should be done, what are your rights, what kind of access of, some people don't even understand that they should have access to some kind of data depending on your relationship with the patient. So how should data be treated? We should have access to data, accountability, all of these things. Each country would typically have these laws. But the CompTIA Security Plus exam, we normally hit on most of these common ones: the GDPR, the FEPA, the COPPA, the HIPAA, the JLBA, the PCI DSS, because these somehow applies to, since we say it's a global world, applies to the global citizens we have in the global world. Then for government, you have FISMA. So for your exam, you want to be able to understand the different regulations and the laws. Then you want to understand for which niche do they apply. So you shouldn't match GDPR, General Data Protection Regulation, with financial, no. Or you shouldn't match FISMA with privacy. So you should be able to know, in your notes, have the different regulations and for which area and what each of them represents. Then governance and accountability. So governance practice ensure organizations abide by all applicable cybersecurity laws and regulations to protect them from legal liability. Governance board, committees, centralized and decentralized, managing risks. Some data governance rules are ONA. You see this like in my country and in most countries, you now have an adaptation of the GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation. Most countries now have like a data governance or data commission that tells people, okay, we are an offshoot of GDPR. Like in Nigeria, you have it as National Data Protection Regulation. There's not a commission that ensures that every company that collects data, processes data, keeps data, any of this category, they do it according to how it should be done. We've looked at policies, procedures, standards, legal environment, and governance and accountability. Let's look at change management. So I talked about, when I was introducing, I said change management will help us tell how we should make changes to our product, to our services, to our system. Because if you just imagine you are doing a project to set up a network, an enterprise network. Now, any change to what you have, that particular system or that particular service, can actually hamper on your cybersecurity posture. Same thing, if you are deploying a web application or a cloud system, for each type of change, there should be like a system, a procedure, a guideline on how that should be done. So it will minimize the risks associated with changes. It will make sure that we don't have a lot of impacts. Our availability, our performance, quality of service is not tampered with, right? So change management is saying anytime we want to make changes to either our client's project, our own internal project, our own product, our own systems, how should we do it? So if we do it in a systematic order, in a systematic approach, it's going to help us keep safe. Then here for change management program, we have stakeholder input. So you can't just change something within the enterprise. You couldn't just say, okay, this product or this system, let's just change. There must be input. Who are stakeholders? So these are project management concepts. Like I normally tell students in cybersecurity, if you want to do vulnerability management, if you want to do pen testing, you need to have some slight knowledge about project management. So on the channel, there's a complete playlist on the PMI project management standard, version 7. You could look it up. And I think it's a 4-hour series in 30 or 40 minutes bits. So you could complete that series to give you a good understanding about what project management is about. Because see this concept now in change management program, this is project management. Because for every project, either as a product or a service or a system, how do you ensure that you change smoothly? A stakeholder is anybody that is going to be impacted, anybody that is going to be influenced, anybody that have a say. So if you're going to do some changes, then you need to bring in their input. Then you need to have a board. You need to have something. It can be the HR, the CISO, the Chief Information Security Officer. It can be the Chief Technical Advisor. It can be the head of the department. That can be our change review board. Some certain people that can look at what we want to change and the impact is going to have on, of course, that's what the impact analysis is about. What is going to be the impact with respect to risks, with respect to cost, with respect to time? You know, for persons that are not experienced or maybe that are not knowledgeable enough to be in this change review board, they want to make some changes in the office. They want to make some changes within the enterprise. They want to deploy a new instance of a software. In their head, they just say, okay, we do this, we do this, we do this, we do that. So most of the times it doesn't work because, or you might not be thinking about the downsides of your actions because most of the time that experience is not there. But with the input of the stakeholders we have in the change review board, they can say, okay, no, from experience, we've done this. This was our result. Okay, let us do it this way. Let us do it this way. We're going to have so and so impact, right? Test results, rollout plans, backup plans, maintenance windows, standard operating procedures. All of these things are part of what is going to make sure that we have a good and a smooth change. Then we have restarts, dependencies, downtimes. They're very explicit, straightforward words that you can conceptualize and understand. Then we have documentation and version control. Version control is so key, especially in softwares and very large enterprise deployments. Even for networks, for cloud application, you have to document. So that's why at times when we're deploying some things for some clients and they just want to send in the money and start the project, we say, no, it doesn't work that way. This kind of project, you don't just start because most of the times you don't even understand the entirety of this project. You first have to document your entire scope. We need to have a game plan. We need to have a deployment kind of guidelines. We need to look at all the risks. We need to look at all the different costs. So because you don't want to be coming back in the midst of the project and say, oh, something went bad. Oh, we didn't expect this. Or there's no KPIs, or you want to roll back your code, or you want to you don't have, you know, some clients are going to be bringing change every now and then to your project, and if you're not documenting, if you're not versionizing your deployment, at times you don't even know where you're coming from and you don't know where you're going to. So you have the project is going to go in spirals. It's going to go in a never-ending game. So you can be doing You can be doing a project for like 3 years at same cost. So that's why documentation is very important. So because if you document properly, when you need to change, you are looking at the plan. How far is this change from our plan? Are we going to incur more cost? Are we going to incur more manpower? All of these are very crucial. Then for version control, how do we take into account of where we are before? What are we trying to do? Where are we heading to? If something goes bad, how can we roll back to a previous code? Okay, we've talked about change management programs, allowed and blocked changes, restart dependencies, downtime. I said you should look at that up. Then documentation and version control. So let's look at automation and orchestration. So here we're trying to say we want to deploy stuff in a very, very automated format, in a very systematic format. So we're going to be using tools, and at times this helps us for better security, improve efficiency. It will help us enforce some of these, our policies. It will provide a clear audit trails of all of the things that we've done. It will enhance efficiency. It will mitigate operator fatigue. So many benefits of automating. So, and this is where DevOps comes in. So DevOps is development and operations. So how do we make sure that there is some people that can tie the end between the developers and the guys deploying and making sure that everything works fine? All the needs of the entire deployment all goes fine. So that's what DevOps is. So you have important consideration when you're trying to do that is complexity, is cost. You don't want single point of failure. Once one thing goes down, everything goes down. You don't want that. Then you're looking at technical debt. So how much are we going to incur? Then you look at ongoing support. When you're looking at what software should you use, what system, what platform should you use? Okay, we looked at automation and scripting, automation and orchestration, implementation. Okay, so that's all for module 14, where we talked about policies, standards, and procedures. So we're saying that as a security analyst, the first thing you want to do when you get into an enterprise is to ask, do you have a policy? Are you putting up to standard? Do you have a guideline? Because no matter what you do, you can install the best systems, the best anti-malware, the best enterprise security system. You could do anything you want to do. If they don't have some set of guidelines, if they don't have a document that tells how they should do things and how they shouldn't do things, you are going to get compromised. Okay, I'm going to see you in module 14.